I always believed my home would be my safest place, the one corner of the world untouched by lies or secrets. Yet a few weeks ago, at 64, I found myself hiding like a fugitive in my neighbor's upstairs guest room, staring out of his window, watching my own front door as if it were the entrance to a crime scene. And in many ways, it was. But before I tell you what I witnessed that midnight, something that nearly stopped my heart, let me explain how I ended up there. My name is Elenina, and this house has been the thread that stitched my entire life together. My husband and I built it board by board 40 years ago. Every corner carries a memory. The kitchen where we burned our first attempt at Sunday pancakes, the living room where we cheered for our son Robert's school awards, the garden where we planted roses every spring. When my husband passed 7 years ago, Robert insisted he and his wife Audrey move in. "So you won't be alone, Mom," he'd said. How tender those words felt then. How foolish they feel now. For a while, their presence warmed the house. Audrey cooked meals, Robert repaired squeaky doors. It felt like healing. But 4 months ago, the air shifted, as if someone had flipped the world upside down. Their laughter became tight. Their smiles became rehearsed. Their conversations stopped the instant I entered a room. "Work stuff," Robert would mutter whenever I asked what they'd been whispering about. "Nothing important," Audrey would add with a smile that looked more like a mask than a mouth. Then the oddities escalated. My old master bedroom, the room I'd converted into storage after my husband died, was suddenly kept locked. The lock had been changed. They never asked my permission. They claimed there was moisture damage, yet I noticed unfamiliar footsteps and stifled giggles late at night coming from behind that door. And then came the night that shattered the illusion completely. Close to 11 p.m., I heard the front door open. Quiet as a shadow, I peeked down the hallway. Audrey was greeting a young woman I'd never seen before, a woman with a small suitcase. Money subtly exchanged hands. Audrey led her straight to the locked room. The next morning, during breakfast, they lied to me as if nothing unusual had happened. That was the moment I knew. Something serious, something intentional was happening under my roof, and I needed proof. So I staged a trip to visit my sister. I pretended to pack, pretended to leave, pretended to board a bus. And then I slipped away to my neighbor Moses's house, where he had already noticed strange activity. And at midnight, everything began unraveling. Before the clock struck 12 that night, Moses told me something that made my blood run cold, something that he had been afraid to tell me for weeks. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping, slow-burn mysteries like this one. Now, let's dive back in. Moses waited a long moment before speaking, long enough that the ticking of his kitchen clock felt louder than my heartbeat. His face carried a mixture of conflict and guilt, the look of a man who had been guarding a truth that troubled him deeply. "Elenina," he finally murmured, "I've been meaning to tell you something I wasn't sure you were ready to hear." I gripped my mug of tea. "What is it, Moses?" He exhaled a slow, unsteady breath, his hands trembling slightly as he set his cup down. "I've seen people coming in and out of your house at odd hours, people I've never once seen before, always late at night, always carrying bags, and they never stay long." My pulse stumbled. "Strangers? What kind of strangers?" "All kinds," he said quietly. "Young women, middle-aged couples, travelers with backpacks. They arrive in taxis or small rental cars. Audrey is always the one who welcomes them. She takes them inside quickly, and they leave before dawn." His gaze lowered. "I kept hoping I'd misunderstood, that maybe you had relatives I didn't know about. But," he shook his head slowly, Last week, I saw Audrey accept cash from one of them. She counted it before letting him in. The room tilted for a moment, as if the floor had gone soft. "Moses, why didn't you tell me sooner?" He looked genuinely pained. "Because I didn't want to accuse your family without certainty. I didn't want to frighten you, but when I heard you say you felt something was off, I realized you deserved to know." A cold numbness crept through me. It wasn't just whispers or locked doors anymore. There were strangers entering my house at night, Audrey taking payments, rooms being occupied without my knowledge. "They're using my home," I whispered. "My home, like it's some underground guest house." Moses nodded gravely. "Yes, that's exactly what it looks like." I felt my throat tighten. My mind rushed through decades of memories, my late husband's hands hammering the shed roof, my son taking his first steps in the living room, birthday candles, Christmas mornings, quiet evenings on the porch. And now strangers were sleeping in those rooms while I slept unaware down the hall. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. But anger wouldn't help, not yet. I needed information, proof, truth, which meant staying hidden and watching. Moses squeezed my shoulder gently. "You can stay here tonight, Elena. From the upstairs window, you'll see who comes and goes. We'll watch together. Whatever's happening, you won't face it alone." Gratitude washed over me, though fear still churned beneath it. "Thank you, Moses, truly." We moved to the second-floor room. From the window, my house sat in full view, innocent on the outside, rotten with secrets on the inside. The hours crept by slowly. First quiet, then lights flicking on, shadows moving, and just when I thought nothing more would happen, a silver car slowed in front of my house. Two people stepped out with luggage, and Audrey opened the door before they even knocked. What happened next, what Audrey did with those guests, confirmed that this was far more than a small side hustle. It was a full-blown operation, and the worst part was still hidden behind a locked door. From Moses's second-floor window, the sight unfolding across the street made my stomach twist into tight knots. Audrey didn't even pretend to be surprised by the couple's arrival. She opened the door the moment their car pulled up, as if she'd been standing there waiting for them. The young man handed her an envelope. Audrey didn't even bother with subtlety. She flipped it open, thumbed through the cash with practiced speed, and gave a satisfied nod before stepping aside to let them in. The woman dragged her suitcase across my front porch and disappeared inside after her partner. I pressed a hand against my heart, which thudded like it was trying to escape my chest. "Moses, did you see that?" "I saw everything," he murmured, jaw tight. "They've been doing this for a while, Elena, but never so openly." A storm brewed inside me, rage, disbelief, sorrow, all churning into something sharp and cold. My own son's wife had turned my home into an illicit rental business. And if there was one thing I was certain of, Audrey wasn't doing any of this without Robert knowing. We stayed at the window, both silent. The lights in my house shifted, kitchen first, then the hallway, then a glow from the locked bedroom, the room I hadn't stepped foot in for years. I felt almost physically ill knowing strangers were inside the space where I had once shared my life with my husband. Their laughter echoed faintly through the night air, carried straight into Moses's window. They were making themselves comfortable, too comfortable. The realization that my home was being walked through by people who didn't even know my name cut deeper than I expected. At 9 p.m., Robert arrived home. He parked in the driveway like it was any ordinary day. Through the window, I watched him greet the guests casually, comfortable, familiar, Not surprised, not confused, complicit. The truth, as hard and bitter as it was, settled in my bones. Robert knew. He had known for months. He'd lied to my face every morning while strangers occupied my rooms at night. I wanted to run across the street and tear open my front door. I wanted to confront him, scream, demand answers. But I forced myself to stay still. Moses was right. If I acted too soon, I'd only uncover the surface of their deception. There could be more, much more that I hadn't yet seen. We watched for another hour. A third car arrived, more luggage, more cash exchanged. Audrey escorted the newcomers to different rooms. At one point, Robert brought down folded towels, handing them out like a concierge. It was official. My son and daughter-in-law weren't dabbling. They were running a full-fledged, illegal mini-hotel behind my back. And if they'd gone this far without hesitation, what else had they already done? The thought hollowed me out. I stayed at that window until nearly midnight, watching strangers vanish into my home like it was theirs, watching my son count the bills at the dining table with Audrey. When their smiles widened at each bill, I swear something inside me cracked. But that crack became a fracture when Moses revealed the other secret he had been keeping, something far more sinister than rented rooms, something involving a briefcase, a meeting, and my future. For a while, neither Moses nor I spoke. The weight of what we'd witnessed pressed down on the small upstairs room like a heavy fog. My own son had turned my house into a marketplace, and every passing hour revealed just how organized and how heartless the operation truly was. But then Moses shifted in his chair, uneasy. That same conflicted expression from earlier crept back onto his face. He seemed to debate with himself before finally saying, "Elenina, there's something else I haven't told you." My chest tightened. Another thing? Moses, what could be worse than what we're seeing now? He swallowed. This started months ago. Before I ever saw the first guest, I noticed Audrey meeting someone regularly. Not at your house, down the street at the small cafe on Westbrook Avenue. That cafe, I knew it well. My husband and I used to sit out on its patio on summer mornings. Just imagining Audrey there, conducting secret meetings like she was planning a corporate takeover, made my skin prickle. Who was she meeting? I asked. A man, Moses said, older, not elderly, but older than Robert, always dressed neatly, suit jacket even in warm weather, the kind of man who carries himself like he works in law or finance. A cold prickle ran down my spine. You said there was more. What else? Moses looked down at his hands as though ashamed of what he'd overheard. They didn't sit close enough for me to hear everything, but a few words carried over whenever the cafe got quiet. And Elenina, those words weren't the kind you want associated with your name. I felt the world tilt. What words, Moses? He met my eyes, hesitant, regretful. Competency evaluation, medical assessment, documentation, transition of authority, nursing facility. My breath hitched, sharp and painful. Nursing facility? Transition of authority? Competency? They weren't just renting out my house. They were plotting something far bigger, something colder. Moses, are you sure? My voice trembled without my permission. I wish I wasn't, but I know what I heard, and I saw something else, something that chilled me even more. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like he feared the walls could hear him. One of those nights after they met, Audrey walked away holding a thick envelope. The man she was with left quickly but kept looking over his shoulder like he didn't want to be recognized. A nauseating wave washed over me. My hands went cold. I could practically feel the threads of my life being tugged, twisted, and rearranged by people I trusted, people who lived under my roof. "What do you think they're planning?" I whispered. Moses hesitated before answering. "I don't know everything, but I believe it involves your legal rights, your independence, maybe even your ownership of the house." Every word sank like a stone into my chest. My heart beat hard enough to hurt. And as if fate wanted to confirm Moses' warning, a few minutes later, a shadowy figure appeared on the sidewalk near my home, someone walking straight toward my backyard, someone carrying a briefcase. That man with the briefcase didn't knock on my front door. Instead, he slipped into the shadows of my backyard, and what he and Audrey did next changed everything I thought I knew. If you're following this unraveling mystery, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next twist. Now, let's continue. The man with the briefcase moved with purpose, his steps quiet, almost rehearsed, as if he had walked this path before. He didn't approach the main entrance. He didn't even glance at the windows. Instead, he slipped along the side of my house and disappeared behind the backyard fence. My breath hitched. "Moses, do you see that? That's him, isn't it? The man you saw Audrey meeting at the cafe?" Moses leaned forward, squinting through the dim evening light. "I can't be 100% sure, but it certainly looks like him. Same build, same way of carrying himself, same briefcase." A cold unease crept through my body. What is he doing going into my backyard? We didn't have to wonder long. Moments later, the side door of my home, the one that led to the backyard and that we rarely used, opened. A faint sliver of warm light spilled onto the grass, and there stood Audrey, half hidden by the doorframe, gesturing the man inside hurriedly, as if she feared being seen. She glanced left, she glanced right, she checked the street. Then she motioned him through with a rapid flick of her hand. The door closed behind them. My pulse thundered. They're meeting in my backyard at this hour? For what? Moses looked grim. Nothing honest ever happens in secret at midnight. We continued watching. After a minute, a faint light flickered on near the old workshop shed behind my house, the same shed my husband had used for decades to fix furniture, sharpen tools, or simply escape the summer heat. A place sacred to me, now glowing in the middle of the night. "They're in the shed," I whispered, the words barely escaping my throat. "Moses, what are they doing in there?" He didn't respond immediately. He didn't have to. We both knew the answer wasn't going to be anything innocent. I could almost feel the distant vibration of danger, like the ground beneath my memory shifting. I leaned closer to the window, heart pounding violently. Through the shed's small, dusty window, we could see only silhouettes, two figures moving back and forth, papers exchanging hands in the faint glow of a battery-powered lantern or small lamp. Audrey's posture was tense, the man's movements deliberate, authoritative. He occasionally opened his briefcase, removing what appeared to be folders, thick ones. What kind of papers? What are they reviewing? Why in my shed? Moses shook his head slowly. Whatever it is, it's serious. At one point, I saw Audrey take something out of her purse, a smaller envelope, and hand it to the man. He counted its contents quickly. Cash again. Always cash. Then he gave her a stack of documents, page after page. She skimmed them with sharp, focused eyes, like someone studying instructions. This wasn't casual, this was coordinated. After about 20 minutes, the light inside the shed went dark. The man stepped out first, slipping toward the back fence. Audrey followed him, opened the small rear gate, and let him vanish into the alley. Then she locked the gate behind him. Locked it, as if sealing away the evidence of their midnight conspiracy. She returned to the house alone. My entire body tingled with dread. Moses, whatever they're doing, it's not just renting rooms. It's something legal, something they don't want anyone to see. Moses nodded solemnly, and I think you need to know every piece of what they discussed. The next morning, I was determined to find out what those papers were, so I slipped into my own backyard in daylight and discovered a metal box that nearly made my knees buckle.
I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dim outline of Audrey and that man exchanging papers inside the shed, moving like shadows negotiating something dark. The secrecy, the cash, the urgency, it all gnawed at my mind. By morning, I wasn't just anxious, I was resolute. I need to get inside that shed, I told Moses as the sun rose, turning the street a soft golden color that felt almost mocking. How could daylight look so gentle while my life was falling apart? Moses frowned, deeply concerned. Elenina, you can't go over there alone. What if Audrey is home? What if she catches you? Then I'll act like I'm tending to my garden, I said, though fear trembled beneath the surface. I know when she usually steps out. She'll be busy with the guests. It's my one chance. He hesitated. At least let me watch from the alley. So we planned it like a covert mission, two aging neighbors preparing to outmaneuver people half our age who were playing a dangerous game. When noon approached and I saw Audrey escorting 3 guests out to their rental car, I knew that was my window. Robert was at work. He always left early on weekdays. Audrey disappeared into the house after waving the guests goodbye. Likely to clean or prepare something, she wouldn't be near the backyard immediately. My hands were trembling when I used my old key to quietly unlock the back gate from the alley. The gate creaked faintly, and I froze, but no movement came from inside the house. The backyard felt strangely unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else now. The garden beds I once tended looked trampled from people walking through them at night. Even the shed seemed different, tainted by secret late-night activity. "Careful," whispered Moses from behind the fence. "I'll keep watch." I nodded, slipped across the yard, and reached the shed door. The padlock was familiar, my husband's old one, but the latch looked recently handled. I found the right key and opened it, one slow click at a time. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and old wood, but something new lingered, an unfamiliar scent, like the mixture of paper and cold metal. Nothing immediately looked unusual. The shelves were still filled with rusted tools and jars of nails. My husband's workbench still held the old hammer he'd used on our fence. But then I saw it. A metal box sat right in the center of the workbench. Rectangular, clean, modern, out of place, like a foreign object in a sacred room. It wasn't locked, not properly, just held closed by a simple latch, almost as if they'd expected to return soon. My pulse thrummed. With a deep breath, I opened it. What I saw inside made my stomach drop. Thick stacks of cash, neatly bundled, at least $10,000. Beneath the bills lay document after document, every sheet crisp and official-looking. I pulled out the first one and nearly dropped it. It was a rental contract with my address listed under property, but the listed owner wasn't me. It was Robert.
And that wasn't even the worst part, because beneath that contract were papers outlining a plan to declare me mentally unfit, all signed and prepared, waiting only for my stolen signature.
For a few seconds, I simply stared at the paper, unable to breathe. My name wasn't anywhere near the owner section. Instead, Robert's name was printed boldly at the top, like he had already claimed what my husband and I spent a lifetime building. My hands shook as I flipped to the next page. It was written in dense legal language, but one line struck me like a hammer. Legal ownership in the process of transfer, pending cognitive evaluation and judicial confirmation. My voice cracked in the empty shed. Transfer? I never initiated any transfer. I dug deeper through the documents, each one more chilling than the last. The second file was a set of medical forms, real medical forms from a licensed clinic. On the top, in cold typed letters, patient Elena Cristina Vega de Herrera. Reason for evaluation, assessment of cognitive decline and decision-making capacity. The appointment date was 2 weeks from now. The description made my skin crawl. Progressive cognitive impairment suspected. Family expresses concern regarding patient's autonomy. Family. My family. My own son and his wife telling medical professionals that I was losing my mind. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to keep reading. I needed the truth, even if it crushed me. Another paper, a quote from a private nursing residence, Golden Haven Adult Care, a monthly fee circled in yellow highlighter, notes scribbled in Audrey's handwriting. Private room, 24-hour supervision, ideal placement after competency ruling. Ideal placement, like I was a broken appliance that needed storage. My breath hitched. I reached deeper into the metal box. And then my fingers landed on the document that froze my blood. A broad power of attorney, a legal document granting someone else complete control of my decisions, finances, property, even medical choices. It was fully filled out, signatures already in place from witnesses and the issuing attorney. Only one line remained empty. My signature. Next to the document was a small pink sticky note, Audrey's handwriting again, unmistakable. Dr. L can administer mild sedative during evaluation, obtain signature while she's disoriented. Witnesses confirmed, additional $5,000 cash. My hand flew to my mouth. They weren't just planning to take my home. They were planning to drug me, to make me confused enough to sign away my life while 2 paid strangers pretended I agreed willingly. The shed blurred in front of me as hot tears welled in my eyes. My husband had built this place with his bare hands, and now the people who should have protected me were plotting to bury me alive inside legal paperwork. I took photos of everything, every page, every damning note. My fingers trembled so badly that some images came out blurry, but I snapped more to be safe. Footsteps sounded faintly outside, voices drifting closer. Panic bolted through me. I shoved the papers back into the box, exactly as they'd been, closed the latch, locked the shed, and hurried quietly back toward the alley. Moses was waiting at the door, face pale with dread. "Elena, are you all right?" I showed him my phone. He flipped through the photos slowly, horrified, shaken, silent. Finally, he whispered, "My God, they were going to erase your life."
Shaking and breathless, I called my lawyer, who told me the truth was even darker than I realized, and that we would need to build a trap of our own.
My fingers could barely dial the phone. I'd seen enough to feel the ground slipping out from under me, but I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could turn the chaos in my chest into a plan. So I called Ellen, my old friend and longtime attorney, the only person I trusted to handle something this monstrous. She answered on the third ring. "Ella Lenena, you sound shaken. What happened?" I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. Finally, I forced them out. "Ellen, they're trying to take everything. My house, my freedom. They have documents, contracts, papers saying I'm mentally declining. They scheduled some kind of evaluation. They even plan to use sedatives." There was silence on the line, deep, heavy silence. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the steady steel of a seasoned lawyer, but underneath it, a ripple of anger. "Listen carefully, Ella Lenena. What you've described isn't just deceit, it's criminal intent. This is planned exploitation of an elder, attempted fraud, conspiracy, and whatever doctor is involved could lose his license permanently." "I took photos," I whispered, "all of it. The forged papers, the notes, the power of attorney, the sedative plan." "That's good," Ellen said quickly, "very good. But it also means we need to act precisely. If they suspect you know, they might accelerate their plan." I swallowed hard. "What do I do now?" Ellen inhaled sharply before answering. "First, you cannot return to that shed or confront them yet. Second, you must protect your legal documents immediately. Third, we need to neutralize any existing authority they think they have. And lastly," she paused, voice lowering, "we're going to set a trap." "A trap?" The idea startled me. "For my own son?" "Yes," she said firmly, "because he and Audrey have already set one for you, and theirs could have cost you everything." I sat down on Moses's couch, suddenly exhausted. "What kind of trap?" "The kind that exposes their intentions in a way the law can't ignore." Ellen's tone sharpened. "I'm bringing in a notary I trust. Tomorrow morning I need you in my office. We're drawing up protections, revoking any potential power they could claim, drafting an updated will, securing your assets, and preparing a formal complaint." "And the trap?" I asked again. "You're going to go back to your house, exactly as if nothing happened. You'll act normal, calm, innocent. Let them think you're still the same trusting mother they believe they can manipulate. They cannot know you've seen the documents." My chest tightened. "Ellen, I don't know if I can stand in the same room with them." "You can," she said softly, "because you won't be standing as their victim. You'll be standing as the woman who already knows every move they're planning." I closed my eyes. She was right. Every word stung, but she was right. Ellen continued, "Meanwhile, I'll coordinate with the city. A municipal housing inspector will visit your home, unannounced. If Robert and Audrey are running an illegal lodging business, their entire operation will collapse on the spot." Shock rippled through me. "You can do that?" "I can, and I will." A strange sensation filled my chest then. Not relief exactly, but strength. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. Control. Ellen's final words sealed it. "By the time this is over, Ella Lenena, they'll realize the woman they thought they could deceive is the same woman who is about to expose them." The next morning, with shaking hands and a racing heart, I walked into Ellen's office, where I signed the documents that would turn the tables completely. Sunday morning arrived far too quickly. My nerves were stretched thin, but determination pushed me forward.
Moses insisted on driving me to Ellen's office, and I didn't argue. My hands were trembling too much to hold a steering wheel steady. Ellen's building sat in a quiet corner of Los Angeles, all glass and clean lines, a place where truth and legality felt stronger than lies and shadows. When I stepped inside, the air felt different, professional, steady, the opposite of the chaos my life had become. Ellen greeted me at the door, her expression warm but serious. Beside her stood a man I didn't recognize. Tidy suit, wire-rimmed glasses, the calm air of someone who handles important documents for a living. "Elena," Ellen said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "this is Henry, the notary I told you about." He nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Vega, I'm very sorry for what you're going through. We're going to make sure you're protected today." His reassurance eased some of the tension in my chest. We all sat around the long wooden conference table, and Ellen pulled out an organized stack of papers. "These are the safeguards," she began. "Today, you regain full control and block Robert and Audrey from ever claiming authority over your assets." She slid the first document toward me. "This revokes any and all powers of attorney, past or future, that they might attempt to claim." I signed. The next document was thicker. "This is a forensic declaration of full mental competency. A licensed expert will evaluate you tomorrow, but we want your statement recorded today. It prevents any falsified narrative of decline." I signed that too, my signature steadier this time. Ellen placed a third stack before me. "This is a new will. It overrides every previous version. Given your evidence, Robert is removed as an heir, not out of spite, but out of necessity." A sharp sting hit my heart, but I nodded. Some things must be done, no matter how painful. When I signed the last page, Ellen gently squeezed my hand. Then came the final document, one I hadn't expected. "This," she said, "is a protective order. If you choose to file it tomorrow with the judge, Robert and Audrey will be legally forbidden from entering your home or accessing any of your possessions." I stared at the paper. It felt surreal, like I was signing a shield into existence. I signed. Henry stamped his seals one by one with precise movements. When he finished, he said, "You're officially protected, Mrs. Vega." A deep breath escaped me, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for days. Now Ellen leaned forward, eyes steady and sharp. "Tomorrow night, you'll go home," she said. "You'll act exactly as if your trip was real. You'll pretend you never saw the shed, the documents, the cash, nothing. Meanwhile, I'll coordinate an unannounced inspection." My stomach tightened. "When?" "Thursday," she replied. "They'll be hosting guests. The inspector will walk right into the middle of their operation." I imagined it. Robert frozen, Audrey stuttering, the strangers confused, the illegal business crumbling in a single night. "And after that?" I asked quietly. Ellen's eyes softened, though her voice remained iron strong. "After that, we wait for them to fall into their own trap." That night, with a suitcase in my hand and a storm in my chest, I walked back into my home, acting like the loving mother returning from a peaceful trip, while hiding the truth that I now held every card. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment before approaching my own front door. The house looked the same as always, calm, quiet, unassuming, yet it felt like a stranger. A place that had been used behind my back, filled with footsteps that weren't mine, laughter that didn't belong, secrets that had festered like mold in the walls. Moses parked half a block away so the act would look authentic. I carried my suitcase to the porch, just like any returning traveler would. When I rang the bell, I heard hurried footsteps from inside, too hurried, the kind of footsteps people make when they fear being caught off guard. The door swung open. Robert stood there with a startled expression, smoothing his shirt as if to erase evidence of tension. "Mom? You're back early. We thought you were coming tomorrow." I forced a warm smile, the kind a mother offers easily, even when her heart aches. "I missed home," I said, "and the trip went quicker than expected." Audrey appeared behind him. Her smile stretched wide, too wide. I could see the flicker of calculation in her eyes, a rapid check for clues. Had I seen anything? Did I know anything? She stepped forward and hugged me lightly. "Welcome back. How was your sister? Did you have fun?" I matched her energy. I had rehearsed this moment with Ellen. "Lovely. We talked for hours, cooked too much, and even reorganized her pantry. You know how sisters get," I chuckled. Their shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. They believed my performance. Inside, the house looked spotless, too spotless. The kind of cleaning done not for comfort, but for erasing traces. Strangers' shoes, suitcases rolling down the hallway, bags stacked by the door. Audrey had scrubbed the place like her future depended on it. And it did. Robert carried my suitcase to my room while Audrey brewed tea. They sat with me on the couch, asking polite questions about the trip. I answered naturally, telling a carefully crafted story about restaurants we visited, old photos we looked through, and TV shows we watched together. I sprinkled in details Ellen helped me prepare to make the lie airtight. They ate up every word. But behind their smiles, behind the nods and small talk, I sensed something else. Relief. They truly believed I knew nothing. Their grip on the plan tightened again. They thought the path was clear. Later, after the tea was finished and the living room quieted, I excused myself to my bedroom. I kept the door cracked just slightly, just enough to listen. Within minutes, their whispering started. "She didn't suspect anything," Audrey murmured. "Her trip was real to her." Robert exhaled in relief. "Good. We can still go through with everything. Friday is the appointment. We just need to get her to sign." My blood ran cold, but I stayed silent, steady, listening. Friday. They were still planning to drug me, still preparing to strip me of my life. They thought I was drifting toward the trap. They didn't know I was the one holding the rope. Over the next days, I played the perfect role while the municipal inspector prepared his surprise visit, one that would expose their secret business in the most devastating way possible. The next 2 days unfolded like the slow tightening of a snare. Every morning I acted cheerful and unsuspecting, brewing coffee, humming songs I didn't feel, asking Audrey if she needed help with the laundry. Every night I listened behind my half-closed bedroom door as they fine-tuned the details of their plan to sedate me on Friday. They thought everything was proceeding flawlessly. What they didn't know was that Ellen had already set the wheels of justice in motion. The municipal housing inspector was scheduled to arrive Thursday night, right when the house would be full of paying guests again. On Wednesday evening, Audrey brought me a colorful brochure. "Look, Mom," she said with a syrupy tone, "this clinic offers free preventative checkups for seniors. I made an appointment for you on Friday morning. It'll be quick." I pretended to read it carefully, though the words on the page looked like jagged teeth. "That sounds lovely," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's good to stay healthy." She seemed relieved. "Exactly. It's for your own good." If I hadn't known her intentions, I might have believed her, but the plan was already collapsing, and she had no idea. By Thursday afternoon, the house began its usual transformation. Audrey changed sheets, fluffed pillows, prepared welcome baskets with cheap chocolates and mini toiletries. Robert vacuumed the hallway and wiped down surfaces, muttering complaints about how much work running a place required. Running a place. My home. They said it so casually. By 7 p.m., guests began arriving. First a young couple, then 3 women on what seemed like a weekend getaway, then a man in a business suit with a rolling bag. I watched from my bedroom window as Audrey greeted them with professional smiles, accepting envelopes, offering room tours, handing out keys. I noted each new arrival, every witness who would soon see the truth laid bare. Inside, Robert fussed with towels in the hallway. Audrey double-checked her little notebook filled with payment amounts and room arrangements. They were so confident that the night would unfold like every other, profitably, quietly, illegally. At 8:59 p.m., I pretended to retire early. I sat on my bed, hands folded, waiting. Then, ding-dong! The doorbell rang, firm, official, not the hesitant ring of a guest. I heard Robert's confused footsteps approaching the door. "Who is it?" he called through the glass. A voice answered, calm, authoritative, and unmistakable. "Municipal inspector, please open the door. We need to conduct an immediate property assessment." The silence that followed was electric, sharp, frozen, almost vibrating with tension. Audrey's voice wavered. "I'm sorry, what? There must be some mistake. This is a private home." The inspector spoke again, louder this time. "Open the door, ma'am. We have a warrant for inspection. If you refuse, police officers will escort us inside." My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the fierce, quiet satisfaction of justice finally knocking. I stepped closer to the bedroom door, listening as it all unraveled. When the inspector walked in and began opening doors, finding strangers in every room, Robert and Audrey's faces drained of color, and their entire scheme collapsed in minutes. The moment the inspector stepped inside, the air in the house shifted. It felt as though the walls themselves stiffened, no longer willing to hide the secrets that had been stuffed inside them for months. I opened my bedroom door just slightly, enough to see, enough to hear, but not enough for Robert or Audrey to notice me right away. The inspector, a tall woman with a clipboard tucked under her arm, surveyed the entryway with sharp eyes. 2 uniformed officers stood just behind her, hands resting near their belts, not threatening, but ready. "Sir," she addressed Robert, "we received reports of unlicensed lodging activity at this residence. We're required to inspect all accessible rooms." Robert froze. His voice cracked on the first syllable. "Lodging? What? No, you must have the wrong house. This is just my family home." The inspector raised an eyebrow. "There are 6 cars parked outside with rental stickers, multiple suitcases on the porch, and 3 separate individuals confirmed this address on our arrival. We will be conducting our inspection." Audrey stepped forward, her smile too rigid, too frantic. "We're hosting a few friends temporarily, just friends, visiting from out of town." One of the officers spoke calmly. "Ma'am, these friends just told us they booked online for a 2-night stay." Audrey's face drained to a chalky pale. Before she could think of a response, the inspector began down the hallway. Audrey scurried behind her like a panicked shadow. Robert followed stiffly, eyes darting everywhere, searching for a way out that didn't exist. The inspector opened the first guest room. A young couple sat on the bed, startled. "Is everything okay?" the woman asked hesitantly. "Yes," the inspector replied politely. "We're confirming lodging compliance." The man pointed to Audrey. "She told us checkout is at 10 a.m. tomorrow." The inspector scribbled something on her clipboard. Audrey visibly flinched. Then they moved to the next room. 3 women, suitcases halfway unpacked, stared wide-eyed at the sudden entourage of authority figures. "We booked through her," pointing directly at Audrey. "We paid cash when we arrived." Audrey's hands trembled. It's not what it looks like." but the evidence was overwhelming, room after room. By the time they reached the last guest room, the one that used to be my master bedroom, Robert's expression had collapsed into raw panic. Not anger, not frustration, panic, like a child caught in a lie too big to wriggle out of. The inspector turned to face them fully. This property is being used as an unlicensed, illegal lodging establishment. You have violated city ordinances, zoning laws, health and safety codes, and business regulations. She flipped a page on her clipboard. Both of you will receive fines, mandatory hearings, and potential criminal charges depending on the extent of income concealed. We also have reason to believe tax evasion may be involved. Audrey gasped. Robert swayed slightly, grabbing the wall for stability. I stepped quietly into the hallway then, calm as a still lake. Robert blinked at me, shocked. "Mom, you're awake?" "Oh, yes," I said, my voice soft but iron beneath. "I wanted to see who was visiting my home." Audrey opened her mouth, but no words came out, just a choked, trembling breath. The inspector turned to me. "Ma'am, are you the legal homeowner?" For the first time in weeks, I felt solid, steady. "Yes," I said, clearly, "I am." And the room went silent. But uncovering the illegal rentals was only the beginning, because once the inspector asked for their permits and identification, a hidden folder fell from Audrey's bag, exposing the darker plot they still hoped to carry out. The hallway hung in a heavy silence after I confirmed ownership of the house. Audrey's lips pressed together so tightly they turned colorless, and Robert's eyes darted between me and the inspector like a trapped animal trying to calculate escape routes. "Thank you, ma'am," the inspector said to me respectfully. "We'll need to review property documents and speak to you privately in a moment." "Of course," I replied calmly. "Anything you need." Audrey, hearing this, clutched her handbag with both hands, too tightly. Her knuckles whitened. The inspector hadn't requested to look inside it, but nerves make guilty people behave strangely, and when she shifted her grip, the clasp popped open. A folder slipped out and fell onto the hallway floor with a soft slap. The inspector's gaze snapped downward. Audrey lunged for it, but the officer beside her moved faster, placing a firm foot on the folder. "Ma'am, please step back." Audrey froze. The officer bent and picked it up, flipping it open. His expression hardened instantly. He handed it to the inspector without a word. She drew in a sharp breath as she examined the documents. "Mrs. Vega," she said, addressing me carefully, "these papers, do you have any prior knowledge of them?" I stepped forward and looked. Even though I had already seen copies in the shed, the sight still struck like cold lightning. The competency evaluation forms with my name on them, the pre-written power of attorney, the nursing facility placement recommendation, a forged letter appearing to be from a social worker, and Audrey's handwritten notes about sedatives and signatures. The inspector's attention flicked sharply to Robert. "Sir? Ma'am? Can you explain why you have these documents in your possession?" Robert floundered. Those are just planning materials, nothing official." Audrey jumped in, voice trembling. "We were helping her. She's been forgetful, confused. We were trying to prepare for her future." I stared at them. The lies came so effortlessly it almost stunned me. "Preparing my future," I repeated softly, "by moving strangers into my home, by hiding contracts, by meeting men in cafes with briefcases, by planning to drug me?" Audrey's face collapsed. "That's not, we never—" But the inspector cut her off. "Ma'am, the presence of sedative instructions, forged paperwork, and prearranged signatures constitutes strong grounds for an investigation into elder coercion and attempted fraud." Robert's voice rose in panic. "You don't understand. She's losing her memory. She's confused." I stepped forward, my voice steady and strong. Would you like to test that theory right now? The inspector nodded. Actually, yes. She asked a series of quick cognitive questions: orientation, recall, reasoning. I answered each one smoothly, clearly, without hesitation. Every correct response tightened the noose around their lie. When I finished, the inspector looked directly at Robert and Audrey. There is no indication of impairment. What I see instead is a coordinated attempt to gain control over a competent adult's assets for financial benefit. Audrey's legs buckled and she leaned against the wall. Robert stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and fear, as if he'd only now realized the depth of the storm he had walked into. But the inspector wasn't finished. Given the severity of what we found, she said, I need both of you to come with us for questioning. And as the officers led them toward the door, Audrey made one final desperate mistake, a mistake that exposed the truth about who masterminded the entire scheme. The hallway felt colder as the officers stepped forward to escort Robert and Audrey out. The guests, huddled near the staircase, whispering nervously, watched with wide eyes. Robert's shoulders were rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscle twitched. Audrey, however, looked frantic, almost feral with panic. As one of the officers gently guided her toward the front door, she suddenly jerked back and pointed a shaking finger at Robert. "It wasn't me," she blurted, voice cracking. "It was his idea, all of it." Her confession exploded into the room like a gunshot. The inspector narrowed her eyes. "Ma'am, please calm down." But Audrey wasn't calming down. Her composure shattered, her mask gone completely. Words tumbled out of her in a breathless rush. "He planned it, the rentals, the documents, everything. He met with that attorney first. He said we needed the money, said the house should have been his already." Robert's face drained to a ghostly pale. "Audrey, stop." "No," she snapped through tears. "I'm not taking the fall alone. You told me to book the guests. You said your mother didn't need the house anymore. You said she'd sign anything if we just made her look confused enough." The inspector raised a hand sharply. "Both of you, silence." But the dam had burst. Audrey wept harder, clutching her bag as if it would anchor her. "I didn't mean to. He told me to." While Robert muttered under his breath, angry, defeated. When the door finally closed behind them, silence draped itself over the living room like a heavy blanket. The guests murmured among themselves, uneasy but relieved to see authority taking charge. The inspector approached me one last time. "We'll be in touch tomorrow," she said gently. "You're safe now." I nodded, though my chest felt hollow. Safe, yes, but deeply wounded. When they all left, I walked slowly into the kitchen, my kitchen. The room smelled the same as it always had: coffee, old wood, a hint of lemon cleaner. Yet it felt entirely different. This time, it belonged to me, to only me. I looked toward the backyard, toward the shed where the truth had first revealed itself. For the first time in weeks, the fear inside me eased, just a little. They had tried to take everything. But I had taken something back, not just my home. My power, my voice, my future. And as I locked the door behind me that night, one thing became painfully, beautifully clear. Sometimes survival isn't quiet. Sometimes it's loud, loud enough to bring an entire house of lies crashing down.